All right, let's talk about some housing. Now, if you've been following along, you'll know that we've done several videos lately on different topics related to housing affordability, both here in Canada and abroad. We did one on what's causing the housing crisis, another on Ontario's unique challenges, and even one on the dark side of investing in single-family real estate. And given that housing is a core component of the Canadian dream, it only makes sense that we follow up with a video on how to make that dream a reality again. Because while it's never been more unaffordable for young people to buy a house, polls tell us that it's also never been less attainable for them to think that it could ever happen. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we go from despair to hope? Well, after digging through several reports and talking to a few experts, we think there are three key things that we can do to start bringing home prices back down and put homeownership back within reach. We call it the Triple H plan: homes, competition, and growth. Let's explain. Now, the first pillar of our plan might seem pretty obvious, but we'd argue that it's the least likely to happen in any significant way. We need to build more homes. And I know that's easier said than done, but just look at these numbers. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the National Housing COP, which sets the country's housing policy, Canada needs to double its current rate of housing output to meet future demand. That means building roughly 5.8 million new homes by 2030, nearly 1.8 million of which would be located in the Greater Toronto Area alone. Where home prices have ballooned over the last decade to almost 10 times the average income, right now, Canada builds around 250,000 new homes per year, most of which are detached houses or low-density condos. But to bring affordability back to 2019 levels, we need to build more apartments, more stacked townhomes, and more mid-rise buildings in and around our major cities, meaning that we need to build a lot more than 250,000 units per year. To meet the goal of 5.8 million new homes by 2030, Canada would need to build 425,000 units per year. And all of that would need to happen in close proximity to existing transit lines or other forms of public transport. Unfortunately, this is going to be a very tough nut to crack, because the political will to approve new developments is often undermined by opposition from NIMBY, groups neighbors not in my backyard, who stand to lose property value or quality of life when their neighborhood becomes denser. But nonetheless, this is the only way to increase supply enough to meet demand, especially since population growth in Canada is expected to hit 10 million new people by 2050. Without an increase in supply, prices will continue to grow faster than incomes, and the disparity between the haves and have-nots will only grow. Which brings us to the second part of our plan: shake up the competition. Over the last couple of decades, Canada's housing market has been dominated by a handful of large construction firms, architects, engineers, and contractors who have limited incentive to cut prices, reduce wait times, or improve quality. Take a look at the profits of these companies over the last few quarters. They're staggering. Now, profit itself isn't bad. Businesses should seek to turn a profit. But when those profits are the result of limited competition, high barriers to entry, and a lack of transparency, they become a problem. So how do we solve this? According to a number of sources we spoke to, there are two ways. We need to invest in new technology. Prefab housing, 3D printed homes, modular components, and mass timber construction methods are becoming increasingly popular around the world. In Canada, is starting to catch on. Earlier this year, the federal government announced a $600 million initiative to promote these innovations in Canada. And to back up that investment, it also launched a national building design catalog that streamlines approvals for developers. Second, we need to cut red tape. Municipalities across Canada are notorious for making the approval process difficult and expensive. The federal government has stepped in to help with the launch of a $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund aimed at helping municipalities modernize zoning laws and streamline permit applications. These two strategies alone won't solve the entire problem, but they'll open the door for new players to enter the market and compete for customers. And that competition could translate into lower prices. But what about the elephant in the room? What about interest rates? Because while building more homes might bring supply and prices down over the long term, what can we do to alleviate the pressure on monthly payments for homeowners? Well, let's move on to the third part of our plan. We need smart growth. You see, Canada's population is growing faster than ever. In 2023, Canada welcomed over 500,000 new permanent residents, bringing our total population to over 40 million people. It's a big deal. This means that we have more workers to drive our economy, more consumers to fuel our businesses, and more taxpayers to fund our services. But that also means more strain on our housing market. And while immigration is a huge part of Canada's story and identity, we need to be smarter about where and how people live. Between 2011 and 2021, suburban sprawl accounted for 73% of new urban development in the Greater Toronto Area. Meanwhile, the proportion of new apartments and other mid-rise buildings reached record highs. That's happening because more people want to live in dense areas near transit, entertainment, and employment centers. And our cities need to reflect that reality, which is why we need to implement policies that 1. Align new housing development with public transit and other community services. 2. Rezone underused commercial or industrial land for mixed-use housing. And 3. Encourage interprovincial mobility for tradespeople so that we can build where it's needed most. Even though these measures won't change the fundamental supply and demand equation, they will soften demand in some of the hottest markets and rebalance it towards areas that need more attention. And they all also ensure that our workforce is where it needs to be to keep our economy growing. Now, some provinces like Alberta and Nova Scotia are already seeing higher growth rates than Ontario and BC, thanks to lower costs and business incentives. That could ease pressure on housing markets in those provinces. But we need a national strategy to make sure that no region is left behind or left overwhelmed. So in conclusion, those are our 3 pillars to rebuild the Canadian dream: build more homes, shake up the competition, and pursue smart growth. Now, none of those options will be easy to implement, especially when the status quo benefits so many and punishes so few. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, because without action, our children will inherit a legacy of inequality, division, and despair. With action, we can give them a future worth fighting for. Now, of course, we couldn't do a video on this topic without mentioning the banks. They love to talk about the Canadian dream, so we asked RBC to tell us what they're doing to make it a reality. And this is what they said. Royal Bank of Canada is committed to supporting the Canadian dream, and we recognize that homeownership is a key part of that dream for many Canadians. As such, we're focused on 3 key areas. First, we're reworking hard to offer a suite of mortgage products that are flexible and affordable for our clients. This includes our recently launched fixed and variable rate mortgages with no prepayment penalties, which gives our clients more control and flexibility over their mortgage. We also offer a variety of first-time homebuyer products and resources to help make homeownership more accessible. Second, we're investing in technology to make the mortgage process faster and simpler for our clients. Our new digital mortgage experience allows clients to apply for a mortgage entirely online, with a decision in as little as 15 minutes. Third, we're partnering with governments and non-governmental organizations to support initiatives that increase the supply of affordable housing. For example, we're providing funding and expertise to help build more affordable housing units across Canada. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to own a home, and we're proud to be doing our part to make the Canadian dream a reality for generations to come. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and share it with someone who cares about Canada's future. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives on policy, economy, and solutions that matter.